Have you ever found yourself in a situation at college where things are just going terribly wrong? You're confused, you're struggling, you're angry, you tried talking to the professors and you aren't getting anywhere. What do you do next? How can you solve this problem? And how can you prevent this problem from happening again in your next class? My goal is to help you address some of those concerns and improve your conversations with your professors in the future and have a better understanding of just how that whole conversation between you and the faculty should best be handled. So welcome to College, Disabilities, and Success, Episode 18, Talking to College Faculty, Part 2, Addressing the Problems by Mickey Hayes. The opinions in this podcast are my own, but please reach out to your college, your physicians, your disability services, or your legal services for any additional information. I think we've all found ourselves in that position at one point or another where things were just not going right in our class. And we had to have a conversation with a faculty member about it, and we weren't quite sure exactly where to go and how to handle it. I know I had many students come to my office with the same issues most of the time after the fact, so that I was brought in to sort of help put out the fires, so to speak. I want to talk to you today about maybe preempting some of those issues and some of the things that you should be aware of that hopefully can avoid those setups in the future. The first thing that I really want to mention here is that faculty is very protective about test security. So when you are looking to discuss your accommodations with a faculty member with regards to taking tests, they're going to tell you how they want you to handle the testing situation. And you need to follow their directions to the letter because they are asking you specifically to follow a certain pattern so that the test will remain secure. And you want that too, because you don't want to be accused of something you didn't do because you didn't follow through correctly. So just know that in your mind. Number one, test security is very important, and you don't want to deviate from whatever the professor arranges for you to do with regards to testing. The second thing I want to talk about is the syllabus. The syllabus is critical for you as a college student. When I had students come to my office with a problem and I had to go to the dean or talk to the dean, the first question the dean asked me and asks the students is, what does it say in the syllabus? They want to know exactly what the professor has laid out in the syllabus to understand where the complication deviated from what the syllabus says. So if you didn't read the syllabus and you did something that you didn't think was really a big problem, but clearly the professor did think it was a big problem because it was stated clearly in the syllabus that this is how we follow up on these issues, and you didn't do that, that's on you, because it is your job as a college student to read that syllabus, to know the syllabus, and to check the syllabus for processes and procedures so that you don't do something incorrectly. Because there's not a whole lot you can do to defend yourself. That syllabus is considered a contract between you and the professor, and you, in essence, have to agree to abide by what the syllabus states. Now, if an accommodation conflicts with the syllabus, then that's a conversation you want to have with the professor to ask how they would like the accommodation to be covered so that you're not making them unhappy about it. If you can't get a satisfactory answer from the professor, then you take it to disability services and have them look into it. But regardless, you need to know what's in that syllabus first before you can challenge what you think is a wrong by the professor. The third point that I want to make is with regards to the ADA law. When you request an accommodation, the accommodation cannot fundamentally alter the nature of the course or the program requirements. You need to understand this. The request for an accommodation cannot fundamentally alter the program or the course requirements. So if you are going into your conversations with the professor and requesting something that is less than what everybody else has to do, that will be a problem, because allowing you to do less than anybody else impacts the validity of your degree and of your course grade. So you have to understand that when you expect an accommodation from a professor, the accommodation is mitigating your disability and addressing the impact of your disability on what the professor expects. But between you and the disability services and the professor, you need to have some conversations about how you can mitigate your disability issue without fundamentally altering the course or the program requirements. You think about it this way, if you will. One of the examples I used to give to students all the time had to do with a medical program. You want a medical person, a nurse or a doctor or anybody who's taking care of you, to know what they're doing and to know exactly what they need to do to take care of you. And so when you go through that nursing program or that medical program, the training that they're giving you is to prepare you for that situation. If they water down the training, they water down your skills and they water down that degree and what you can ultimately do in your job. The idea is that the college establishes a program with certain requirements, and you need to meet the requirements of that course without changing those requirements. So when you're dealing with a disability that could impact those requirements, you need to have a conversation with your disability services specialist or the professor to see the best way that you can still learn the knowledge that the course requires and that the professor requires. So you may show that you know the knowledge in a different way, but you still have to show that you know the same knowledge and you went through the same battery of requirements. So sometimes the courses that you select can get very complicated. That's where a lot of work should be done ahead of time, planning through that, seeing that, understanding that, knowing what you need to know. Sometimes preconceived notions get in the way, and the professor may have a preconceived notion about what you can and cannot do. But that's where you have to have those conversations with the Disability Services Office. But just remember, by the law, the Disability Services Office cannot fundamentally alter the nature of the course or the program requirements. And the fourth point I want to make in today's podcast has to do with talking to the professor after you've taken your test. Now, this is hard for students, but it's something that really makes a huge difference. If you start off on a high note and do really well on your first test, that encourages you to keep it up. But if you start out on a low note and just fall apart on your first test, you already feel defeated. So to avoid the next test being the same way, or the next assignment being the same way, you need to sit down and talk to the professor. Talk to the professor during office hours. What are those office hours? They're on the syllabus. We already had that conversation. But talk to the professor during office hours. Ask to go over the test. You know, the professors really want you to come and see them. If you're struggling, they want to help. And you really, really, really need to believe this. Go to the professor. Find out where you went wrong with that test, where your mistakes are at, what things you did or didn't do that hurt your grade, so that you can then address those situations for your next test. And hopefully, by the time you address the problems, your test scores will start to go up. In the meantime, if you're not understanding the content, get thee to the tutoring center. Every college has one, but you need to go to the tutoring center, because sometimes you can misunderstand information when one person says it, but when somebody else explains it to you, it's all of a sudden, oh, okay, light bulbs are going off. I get it now. And you start to understand it from a different point of view. So talk to your friends, talk to the tutoring center, talk to the professor, but find out where you went wrong on that first test so that you can avoid the problems on the second test. So my goal today was to help you avoid and solve some of those problems that you may have when you're talking to the professor. Rule number 1, know that test security is paramount to the professor. They have to keep their tests secure, and you do not want to be accused of messing with that test security system that they have in place when you get your accommodation. So make sure you follow their directions to the letter. The second one is know the syllabus. If it conflicts with your accommodations, talk to the professor and Find out how you can mitigate that problem and work around that problem. Point number 3, the professor cannot fundamentally alter the nature of the course or the program requirement, so you need to find a way to accommodate you, mitigate your disability, but not alter the course program requirement itself. And then the 4th thing you should do to avoid problems and conflicts is to go back to the professor after a test and find out where you went wrong. If you had a problem and you were completely taken by surprise by it, you need to figure out why and go to the source, talk to the professor, but do it during their office hours. If you know these things that I mentioned today, and if you actively follow points I made about test security, following the syllabus, what the ADA law says, and following up on your mistakes, if you do these things, you are going to find yourself having less and less conflicts with professors. Now, if you still find yourself in a conflict with a professor, and it happens, please, please, please talk to the Disability Services Office. You do not know how many students came by my office at the end of the semester because they failed a class, but I didn't know anything about it. Because you're not in high school anymore. In college, the professors don't come to us in the disability services and tell us that you're not passing. They tell you, but they don't tell us. So the only way I would know as a disability specialist that you're struggling is if you came and told me. If you have a problem and you can't resolve it yourself, go straight to the disability services specialist as soon as possible and ask the disability services specialist to run interference for you. Do not wait until the end of the semester, because at that point, it's just too late. Thank you very much for your attention today. I hope you found the information and the insights that I shared with you important. I think they are, because I've seen too many students struggle in the past with some of these areas of issue. And so the more you can prevent yourself from hitting those walls and having those arguments and having those conflicts, the happier you'll be and the better the college experience will be for you. If you have any questions, go to my website, mickieteaches.com, MICKIE teaches.com, and send me your email, and I will get in touch with you and follow up with you and answer your questions as best I can. Thank you very much, and have a perfect day. Thanks. Bye. Information contained throughout this podcast has been gleaned from my own personal experiences, but to ensure accuracy, please contact the Disability Services at the college of your choice to have first-hand information and the most up-to-date policies and procedures followed by your particular institution of higher education. The content in any of these podcasts is not intended as a substitute for information from legal, educational, or medical professionals. Always seek the advice of your attorney or qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have with regards to legal, educational, or medical concerns.